Cameras caught Kirk Frost in a violent outburst that shocked everyone and left Rasheeda crying in what is now considered to be one of the most breathtaking moments in love and hip-hop history. The tape was released just hours earlier, and fans have already taken to social media to demand explanations, with producers trying to steer the story, but the damage might already be done. It all began on what should have been a routine day of filming. Just another scene between the longtime couple, but things went wrong. Voices were raised, accusations were made, and then the moment that sent the internet users are in a frenzy when Kirk attacked Rasheeda in a way that nobody saw coming from the man she had been with for years. They want to know what went on behind the scenes. Was this a one-time incident or a sign of something far more sinister? Rasheeda has not made any public comments, but insiders say she is devastated and finished. VH1 insiders speculate that this scandal could jeopardize not only Kirk's career, but the entire franchise. Stay put because what we're about to reveal will leave you speechless. The harsh glow of the production ignites the love. Kirk Frost strolled onto the stage with a tense face and a tight mouth, as if fighting back a storm, while Rasheeda sat in the middle of the usual control pandemonium that was the hip-hop set. Cameras were lined up, assistants were running around, and makeup artists were doing last-minute touch-ups. The audience was unaware that just seconds before the camera began, she was scrolling through her phone in the corner, trying to appear calm, but anyone who knew her could see the emotion simmering just beneath the surface. The tension between them was cold, and the entire team sensed something strange, something about to break. "I don't know how much longer I can pretend this marriage is fine," Reva said in a private text message she was sending to a friend about Kirk's most recent violation, which Kirk found on her phone while shooting. When Kirk saw it, he remained silent and simply moved to his assigned location on the set, waiting for the action to start. However, he was furious. The scene they planned to film was supposed to be simple, a conversation about their son's school situation, but Kirk was unable to fake it when the director called for action. Instead of following the script, he went on a diet. "Is that how you really feel?" He pulled me behind my back while acting for the camera. His voice was low and penetrating, and Rasheeda looked up in astonishment. This wasn't even close to being in the script. "What are you talking about?" she asked, her voice already breaking. "I saw everything in your little messages." The team hesitated, unsure if this was traumatic acting or real life playing out in front of them. The tension was high, and the atmosphere looked heavy as Kirk yelled and edged closer to Rasheeda. When Kirk said, "You've been making derogatory remarks about me while smiling in my face. That is not true, Rasheeda, and I'm sick of false," his eyes widened. "Did you go through my phone? Don't act like you're innocent." The director then tried to delete the sequence, suggesting Rasheeda's voice was shaking as she added, "I need to vent to someone, Kirk. I can't keep it all in anymore." "You were never there, you lie, you're a cheat," I was about to cry, but Kirk wouldn't stop. Kirk was pushed over the edge by those words, just "I'm drowning." He swiftly raised his hand, and no one anticipated what happened as his palm touched Rasheeda's. Rasheeda was stunned, her face turned away, one hand slowly rising to touch her cheek in what appeared to be slow motion to everyone watching. The loud smack echoed throughout the studio, and gasps filled the air as someone dropped a clipboard. When he slapped her, there was a brief moment of silence before everything sprang into action. Crew members raced forward, the assistant director called for security. One of the soundmen rushed over to Rasheeda, and Kirk simply stood there, breathing heavily with his eyes wide, as though he couldn't believe what he had just done. But it was done. It was irrevocable. And the cameras kept rolling. Not intentionally, but out of shock, because the movie was shot from multiple perspectives. Kirk Frost, a long-standing cast member, was captured on tape, hitting his words spread quickly outside the set. Something terrible has just happened. A staff member texted someone. Kirk then slapped Rasheeda on camera, and the chain reaction started. Within minutes, social media was exploding. As Rasheeda was led to her changing room, her name was already buzzing. Fans were in shock and didn't want to believe what they were hearing, but the words kept coming in. Everyone had a different version of events, and none of them painted Kirk in a positive light. Meanwhile, Rasheeda sat quietly in her dressing room. Her cheeks were already red, and her makeup had spilled, but she stopped crying because the tears had dried up. Instead, she felt a strange sense of relief, as though something that had been hidden for a long time had now come to light. The producers were in a panic outside the door, arguing over what to do. Some wanted to stop the entire shoot, while others mumbled to her stylist, "You really did it, he truly struck me in front of everyone." Claimed that they needed to make a statement before the tape came to light. But one thing was for sure, this would not stay a secret. Someone had already recorded it on their phone, and even though the network's cameras captured everything in high definition, the shaky phone footage would be the first to be posted online. Kirk had left the set no sorry, no explanation, just a tense, incomprehensible face and shoulders. He didn't talk to anyone, not even his manager, and simply got into his car and drove off. The first video was posted online the following morning. Kirk Frost smacks Rasheeda in a grainy, unsteady, but recognizable way. Fans were furious, and others called for him to be fired, imprisoned, or canceled. Celebrities started to speak up, and one rapper tweeted, "No excuses," no, an R&B singer stated, "I grew up watching them, and now I'm heartbroken." Even the show's executive producer, Mona Scott, couldn't keep quiet. "Violence has no place in our production decisions are being made," she said in a vague but clear message. There were rumors that Kirk had been suspended indefinitely, while some claimed that VH1 was thinking of canceling the entire season. Rasheeda stayed mute throughout, but the silence ended a few hours later. She posted a single image of a black screen on Instagram with no caption. Her fans, however, flooded the comment section with their love, saying, "We love you. Leave him. You deserve better." The love poured in, and she felt pressured to speak up and share her side of the story. The world was unaware of Rasheeda's internal conflict between humiliation, wrath, sadness, and confusion. She wasn't sure whether she wanted to remain married or face charges. But she was aware that everything had changed, not only for herself, but also for others. Surrounding her, and this was just the start, as what transpired in that scene was only a single aspect of a much larger, darker story that had been simmering for years behind closed doors. Since the truth had been made public, there was no turning back now. The world had seen Kirk Frost enraged, but the repercussions had just begun, and the silence after the storm did not last long. As everyone waited for Rasheeda to speak, the damage was much more than anyone had anticipated. Kirk's slap not only injured her cheek, but it also destroyed years of dedication and trust. People have watched them fight on camera, endure adultery scandals, emotional breakdowns, and endless gossip before, but this time was different. It wasn't just drama for TV. It was unadulterated savagery captured on video. Rasheeda sat by herself in her home in real time, and it was impossible to ignore. Her team told her to stay away from social media and the media, and to take some time to recover, but instead of mending, memories kept coming flooding back. She had forgiven, justified, and defended Kirk, even though she knew he didn't deserve it. It felt like the world had now learned about her years of concealment, which made it even more painful. Her phone was constantly buzzing with messages from friends, family, and co-stars. Had something to say. While some people were checking in, others were horrified, but far too few admitted they weren't surprised. One cast member commented, "We've seen the signs for years. It was just a matter of time." For a few minutes, Rasheeda stared at the writing. Time how long had she waited for things to get better? How many times had she convinced herself that love meant staying silent? Kirk was hiding out in a friend's condo, far from the cameras and the chaos. He had not called Rasheeda, but instead of apologizing, he kept replaying the episode in his mind, trying to justify it and turn it into a reaction rather than an attack. He told himself that she had provoked him, but she went too far, saying it was just he crossed an uncrossable line. His phone rang, and it was Monica Scott. He didn't answer, and then it rang again. Then he received a text that said, "We need to talk. This is serious." No matter how many times he tried to reframe it, the reality remained clear. Kirk slammed down the phone and paced the room, knowing that the network was furious, that the video would be examined, that legal teams would be called in, and that statements would be made. He also knew that his reputation, or whatever the rest of it, was swiftly degrading while the internet went into overdrive. Fans retrieved earlier recordings of Kirk disparaging Rasheeda and assessed his tone, body language, and reasoning using the hashtags #Fairek and #Justice for Rasheeda. Kirk Frost trended for hours, and news outlets even reported on the event, describing it as a reality TV scandal that turned into a real-life tragedy. Panelists debated whether VH1 should terminate Kirk's contract, and insiders informed podcast hosts that this wasn't the first time he had acted aggressively off-camera. Rasheeda's mother, who was well known for fiercely protecting her daughter and for not holding back, suddenly came into the foreground. She spoke passionately during an unplanned live session, and I had cautioned her years ago that you cannot build love on sadness. Now, behold, he placed her words echoed like a battle cry on social media, with fans rallying around her to praise her bravery and characterize her as the voice Kay needs right now. Rasheeda watched the video quietly, and it made her cry, not because of what her mother had said, but because she knew it was. It's true that she disregarded the warnings, her gut feelings, and her sleepless nights, all for what? A marriage that had become a prison and a friend who had become a stranger. Despite this, she remained cautious. Perhaps something inside of her would not give up. It may have been love, fear, or perhaps she didn't know who she was without Kirk after all those years of protecting him. The network released a statement the next day saying, "Though one is aware of the situation involving Kirk, and although it was unclear and safe, supporters were unhappy and demanded action. Rasheeda Frost, we condemn any forms of violence. Measures are being taken to ensure the safety and well-being of our cast." The executives were in crisis mode, and Kirk finally broke his silence, not with an apology, but with a terrible video posted on his story, when sponsors started withdrawing Kirk's ads from the program. People only see what the... There are two sides to every story, he said in a weary and defensive tone, and I regret what happened. I love my wife, and I never meant to hurt her, but the harm was done. The most of the indignant comments were, "You didn't apologize." One fan said, "You were a second person added, 'We witnessed the smack and the fear. Please don't deceive us.'" Rasheeda did not respond, not in public, but she was secretly getting ready, and her team had hired a lawyer to go over her options, not to sue Kirk. So I made the decision to quit the show entirely because she was tired of acting, and I was tired of pretending. Carrying a story that had become a nightmare. But as the days went by, another twist emerged. In raw and unedited footage recorded prior to the Slack being leaked, Kirk was seen pacing aggressively backstage while muttering to himself, saying things like, "I'm done playing the good guy, and she's going to learn today." The revelation confirmed supporters' fears that the smack was planned and not just an accident. He was already in a downward spiral when the cameras caught him. This insight altered everything, even for those who producers began re-editing episodes to lessen Kirk's appearance. And fellow cast members started to distance themselves from him. Rumors circulated that he would be completely removed from any future stories. Despite everything, Rasheeda remained relatively silent, but her strength started to show in unexpected ways. She streamed live from her workplace, joking with staff and sharing pictures of her happy kids. She didn't mention Kirk once, but it was clear that she wasn't broken this time. There were still uncertainties, though. Will she return to the program, or will she confront Kirk? The world watched, speculated, and waited for Kirk to openly or permanently leave. Once a major figure in hip-hop and love, Kirk now finds himself alone and rejected, and he worries about whether his empire will endure the fallout. As the dust settled, Rasheeda's silence became more noticeable. Her posts without Kirk in the picture were interpreted as statements, and her smiles without him as signs of survival. However, beneath those brief displays of strength, there was a woman still coping with the betrayal of her strength was praised by lifelong fans. But they were not present when she wept alone, when she questioned everything she did, or when she nearly caught him but stopped herself. Meanwhile, Kirk's job was falling apart more quickly than he could manage, and the network brands that had previously supported him began to distance themselves from him. And even some of his long-term business partners made hints about reconsidering their relationship with him. Kirk was being destroyed piece by piece, and nobody publicly stood up for him. But what shocked? What Kirk was most upset about was not the company losses or the media attention, but rather Rasheeda's silence. He had expected her to go out, perhaps going live and shouting his name into the void. But instead she just went on, which felt awful and let him realize that I need to tell my side. He said, "Let me explain before they cancel," but Kirk couldn't let go that easily. In a desperate attempt to change the story, he called one of the show's producers and asked for a sit-down segment. Me for all time. The producer was hesitant because there were risks, but drama was profitable. A few days later, when the cameras were rolling again, this time in a closed studio, Kirk was sitting under the lights, sweating profusely on his forehead. His voice broke as he began, and Kirk, desperate, raw, and rejected, was drama gold. He cleansed his face, but I never thought it would get this far. I grew up in a chaotic environment, he said. I never saw a good relationship. Perhaps this explains why I make so many mistakes. Maybe it is why I messed up with Rasheeda. The video was supposed to be clips from the interview went viral, but not in the way Kirk had hoped. One fan commented, "He isn't good at what he does." Instead, it sparked another fire. The audience saw through his remarks and called it performative manipulation. A new voice unexpectedly joined the scene, saying, "I'm sorry for what I did. I'm sorry I got caught." Kirk's oldest daughter from a prior relationship revealed a perplexing "he's been like this, and you're just now learning about it." It was like opening the floodgates as more family members, old friends, and even a past romantic partner came forward to disclose years of mental instability, control issues, and poisonous behavior that had been hidden behind cameras for far too long. Rasheeda, viewed from a distance, every new finding seemed to fit into a puzzle that she had no idea was being put together. Things began to make sense, particularly the way Kirk always managed to shift blame for years. She carried shame that wasn't her own, but now she was shedding it piece by piece. Even as Kirk's reputation waned, a number of characters on the program tried to take advantage of the incident. Producers had a secret meeting to discuss turning the drama into a "what is the plan" for a special episode that would bring Rasheeda and Kirk together for a live confrontation. The ratings would be enormous, and the buzz would be unstoppable. But there was a catch. Rasheeda refused to take part, and her staff rejected the request right away. Rasheeda wasn't ready and wasn't interested in offering Kirk a chance to make amends. But the producers persisted and reached out to me once more with an offer of full editing rights, creative autonomy, and a sizable reward. On the one hand, she wanted to remain composed, but she also understood that this might be her last chapter, an opportunity to wrap up the story the way she wanted. After days of consideration, she agreed, but with the caveat that Kirk wouldn't be aware of her agreement until the day of filming. Arrived on set anticipating a solo performance. He mentally rehearsed words to appear weak, apologetic, and contrite, but his lips dried up when he noticed Rasheeda sitting calmly across from him. She did not smile. When the cameras started to roll, Kirk tried to speak first, but Rasheeda held up her hand and murmured softly, "No, you said enough. You are now listening." She simply waited to meet him. "I gave you everything," she stated in a forceful, loving, devoted, and patient voice as the studio became silent. "Even if you didn't deserve it, I stayed and fought for us. And what did you do? You made me look foolish and hurt me." Kirk bent his head repeatedly, and then all of a sudden, the world witnessed what I've been going through. You still couldn't accept real responsibility, so you played the victim and made excuses. Kirk tried to step in, but she interrupted him. I was hurting too. Kirk's eyes filled with tears, but Rasheeda did not crack. "You don't get to dictate my story anymore," she said, gesturing that she could not hurt me, and then complain about her own suffering. The footage from that scene was never presented in its entirety. Only a few parts, featuring Rasheeda's words and Kirk's responses, were released. Around the set, it was closure. Kirk was shocked, and for the first time in years, he was unable to speak. The fan base was shocked by the excerpts. People praised Rasheeda for her resilience and called her a role model. Women all over the nation shared stories of their own breakups and moments of regaining control. Kirk, for his part, fell silent once more. His team issued a final statement. "We'll be leaving the spotlight to concentrate on personal development and recovery." That might have sounded like a farewell, but one thing was for sure. Nothing would ever be the same again. Even so, there were still more mysteries to be solved. Kirk's statement had been issued, but the repercussions of his silence were far from over. While the public had been given closure, those closest to him realized that nothing was truly resolved. He had disappeared from the public eye, but the rumors continued to linger behind closed doors, and Kirk's family was in chaos, especially his oldest child. Were entangled in the wreckage, and while some felt sorry for their father's struggles, others were more blunt in their evaluation, particularly after witnessing how Rasheeda became so strong. Kirk's past was starting to affect him. He was no longer just a man whose reputation was being noted. His eldest daughter sent an enigmatic tweet that read, "This ain't just about Kirk and Rasheeda anymore. It's about a broken family and how we pick up the pieces." This was the real impact on his family. Fans responded in droves to the enigmatic message, with some expressing concern for the children and others, taking advantage of the occasion to criticize Kirk's parenting. They demanded that he take accountability for the years of agony his family had endured. The drama was not over. The media had heard of a shocking rumor that someone close to Kirk had leaked a breathtaking story about Kirk allegedly having a series of private meetings with another reality star who had previously been very close to the show. The details were vague, but the implication was that Kirk was preparing a big comeback and wasn't yet done battling for his place on Love and Hip Hop. The story went viral, bringing Kirk back into the public eye, but this time without a heartfelt apology or introspection. Regarding personal development, No, this was a desperate attempt to reclaim what he felt he had lost. Rumor had it that he was working with a former producer who had been fired from the show a few seasons earlier. They were reportedly creating a new, darker story that would present Kirk in a completely different light. But Kirk had he was the antagonist of the story, and reality TV seldom offers antagonists a second chance. Rasheeda's life was in danger, and even when the whispers grew louder and he tried to negotiate a return, no one thought he would be saved. Completely different path after the altercation on the show. She started receiving offers from companies that had previously shunned her. Her social media presence increased, and she started sharing details about her personal struggles, career ascent, and how she and people came together to support her after she finally learned to put herself first. Her fan base was growing daily, and she felt liberated in a way she hadn't felt in years. In addition to the attention she received, other celebrities started to show their support, express their sympathies, friendship, and support to Rasheeda. Some even remarked on how incredible it was to see her not only survive, but flourish in spite of everything she had been through. The floodgates had opened, and people started to view her as more than just a reality TV star, but as a woman who had went through enough hardship to write her own survival story. But behind the scenes, Rita was battling her own issues and being pulled in several directions by media appearances and family responsibilities. She was worn out, and there were days when she just wanted to ignore the commotion, but she was unable to do so after everything that had happened to her. She was no longer the woman who cried in private, hoping that her husband would change. Instead, she was a stronger person. Nevertheless, even as she regained her, there were times when she questioned whether she was strong enough to bear the weight of her own news story. And in the weeks after the public conflict, she had moments of weakness and worried if Kirk would ever truly face the consequences of his actions. Rumors circulated that the producers were considering him for a spin-off series that focused solely on his redemption arc. And Kirk's team was reportedly in negotiations with the network to promote the concept that Rasheeda's tale was far from ended. In a private meeting with her employees, she made it clear to her management and the network that she would leave if Kirk returned in any significant way. She said, "I'll leave before I let him drag me back into that toxic mess." Her decision was not just about Kirk, it was also about herself. Well-being, and she was making decisions for herself for the first time in a long time, but Kirk did not give up that easily. In an effort to improve his reputation, he went public with a social media message that said, "I am aware that I made a mistake. I know I've harmed you." But if he went on to say, "There's even a slim chance of rebuilding what we had. I'll do whatever it takes. You mean more to me than anything, and I will spend the rest of my life trying to make things right." However, Rasha did not respond. She did not even acknowledge the post, which seemed to be another attempt to change the narrative for her. As things seemed to be settling down, a new bombshell was dropped. Kirk's close buddy, who had supported him during the dispute, said that Kirk had been seeing someone else. She had learned the hard way that words were meaningless and that actions were what mattered. Throughout his entire marriage to Rasheeda, the revelation stunned an already divided community, leaving many fans in shock and unable to accept it. Kirk tried to salvage what was left of his public persona, but it was too late. Every lie and betrayal had ultimately caught up with him. He was no longer able to avoid his past. Kirk's life kept falling apart, and the media storm grew more intense. His efforts to enhance his public character had failed miserably, and now his private life was on display for everyone to see. The revelation of fans who had previously backed him turned against him, accusing him of being a coward, a manipulator, and a liar. His affairs caused a stir in the entertainment industry, leading some to question whether he could truly make a difference. His social media accounts were flooded with mocking remarks, and even his most after the incident. Kirk's efforts to mend his marriage seemed fruitless. He tried to get in touch with Braca multiple times, sending flowers and writing long, apologetic letters, but devoted supporters started to question whether he deserved another chance. And even making an unexpected appearance at her home, but Rasheeda refused to meet with him each time. She had heard all of his previous apologies, but this time they seemed hollow. She had finally come to terms with the fact that Kirk couldn't give her the kind of commitment she required, and she had started a new life for Rash's determination to cut Kirk out of her life was strengthened when she got support from an unexpected source. Her mother, who had always been suspicious of Kirk, sat down with her daughter and told her the harsh reality. "You've been through enough, baby. No man is worth this suffering." Rasheeda was awakened by her words. She didn't need Kirk's promises or apologies. She needed peace, authority, and independence. Kirk's public image declined as his attempts at reconciliation grew more desperate. Kirk's demise was complete, and he was left scrambling to pick up the pieces of his broken career despite the fact that the reality television industry, which once loved his drama-filled plot, now rejects him. According to the producers of Love and Hip Hop, Kirk will no longer be included on the show in any major capacity. Kirk's team persisted in pursuing his comeback plan. A new series, a documentary-style show that followed his journey to redemption, was rumored to be in development. The idea seemed too good to be true, and many people saw it as just another calculated attempt to capitalize on his errors. Kirk's team emphasized that it wasn't only about making money. It was also about showing the world that he could change and become the person he claimed to be. However, it was evident that his decline from favor had happened too quickly, and the public had lost interest in his sob story. While Kirk's career was in ruins, Rasheeda's was flourishing. Her business ventures were profitable, and she was in high demand for high-profile collaborations. She had emerged as a lady who had persevered through a difficult relationship to become. Rasheeda uses her platform to inspire others by sharing her story of self-love, independence, and strength. Her story impacted millions of followers, many of whom had faced similar struggles in their own lives. She became a beacon of hope for women who had been in abusive relationships, showing how they could turn their lives around and regain their influence. Whereas Kirk, the franchise's former face, sank into obscurity as his social media following dwindled as public interest in him waned. His attempts to stay up to date looked more and more pathetic as he held on to the past with every post and public statement. His once bright career had turned into a cautionary tale, showing how quickly fame can fade when commitment and trust are betrayed. In a desperate move, Kirk posted a video on social media. He made an honest, sincere, and repentant attempt to save his reputation. He confessed his transgressions, acknowledged the suffering he had caused Rasheeda, and pledged to do better. But once more, his words fell hollow. His admirers had witnessed this side of him. Kirk had to take a hard pill, regardless of how many times he apologized or promised to mend his ways. The video caused both sympathy and cynicism, with some followers feeling let down and others simply moving on and losing interest in his story. Actions spoke louder than words. He had lost not only his wife, but also his professional reputation and status on reality television. The trust he had broken with Rita and their family could never be fully rebuilt. Rasheeda, on the other hand, was the media frenzy over their failed marriage eventually receded, to be replaced with new controversies and faces on reality. On the go, we are stronger, smarter, and more driven than ever before. She went on to rise above the circumstances, putting Kirk and his lies behind her. Television, but Rasheeda had gained an important lesson. Never accept less than what you deserve. Kirk's lesson was that actions speak louder than words, and that it's not always feasible to make amends. In the end, Kirk's violent tirade at Rasheeda was just one part of a much larger tale of public humiliation, betrayal, and the end of a once dominant reality TV personality. One thing became evident after everything was said and done. Kirk Rasheeda was the one who won the spotlight moment. She had taken the initiative. Of her tale turned her suffering into strength and showed the world that despite everything, she might thrive. What a tornado of emotions. We are all shocked by Kirk Frost's shocking outburst and untimely death, despite everything. Rasheeda emerged more resilient than before, exhibiting incredible tenacity. Do you think will Kirk ever be able to turn his life around completely? Or will his past catch up with him? Please leave your thoughts in the space provided below. We would want to know if you think this is Kirk's final chapter, or if he might still return. So if you haven't already, hit the like button and subscribe to the channel for the latest happenings in the reality world and more dramatic celebrity news.